Murderous Tongues, Episode 4. The Thaw. The town has a habit of keeping its eyes lowered. It looks at boots, not faces, at snow, not sky. In winter, people here learn to measure time by the color of breath. Morning breath is white and thin, noon breath turns blue with wood smoke, and by night the air is so cold it swallows even that. Names matter less when the wind says them back wrong. So there are few names in this story and many kinds of quiet. A mill by the frozen river hums even after the day whistle, because machines in this town hate stopping. Apartments bloom from Stalin-era brick like stubborn lichen. Street lamps tremble. The ice on the gutters grow teeth. And above one narrow lane whose cobbles never quite thaw, I wait. No one looks up. They should. The man they call foreman here, because someone must be called that, leaves the mill late, shoulders squared against cold that knows its business. He has a broad face that would look kind if you did not know him. Men under him say he squeezes quotas the way frost squeezes pipes. He wears a hat with a dead animal's ghost in it, and gloves thinned by too many winters. In the mill office, he is bold. Outside in the wind, he is only a man, trying not to let his teeth speak. He has been called in that day to answer for a rumor. Rations went missing last week, coal before that. Someone suggested his name in a tone designed to sound like regret. He answered with numbers and paper, and the kind of stare that hopes to make paper into proof. But paper in this town folds to fit pockets. And he left the office not with guilt, something simpler, with rage that felt cleaner than everything else he had touched. The rival, there is always one, a man who learned to smile before he learned to work, had stood in the corridor smirking, a small triumph whitening his lips. "They listen to me now," his smirk said, without sound. The foreman kept walking, because walking admits less than turning back. He does not go home when he leaves the mill. Home is where despair gets loud. Instead, he wanders the vain work of alleyways where garbage freezes into shapes that almost remember summer. He walks the length of the lane with the gutter that never drains, and the cold eats the words he isn't saying. The lane turns just before it meets the river. A low roof hangs heavy with snow that will not fall. From its edge, something long and clear and patient points toward the street center. A stalactite with ideas. It has grown by thrift and accretion, by the arithmetic of drip and freeze, by the night's insistence on finishing what day refused to. He stops beneath it, not because he knows what it is, but because he knows what he needs. A way to make a night rearrange itself into a morning he can survive. He reaches up. The cold bites his glove, bites again. He twists once, twice. It is like coaxing a tooth from a jaw, and then it comes free into his palm with the small, pleased sound a secret makes when it thinks it has found the right ear. He weighs it. He's surprised by the honesty of the weight. Tools that shout often weigh less. This one is quiet and real. He looks at its length. He tests its point against his glove and finds the clean puncture of potential. He smiles without meaning to. Rage makes many expressions wear the same coat. He does not put it in his coat. The heat there would start telling it the wrong story. He cradles it across his forearm instead, a shy gentleman's cane. Across town, in the brick building with windows that stay bright too late, the rival sits at his table. He is a shorter man, but height is a trick the eye plays for bullies. He sorts envelopes into the piles men like him use as weather vanes. Favors gone out, favors yet to be asked, favors that must be called debt soon or never. He hums the tune the mill whistle does not. because for men like him, the factory is a song he never had to learn to sing. The foreman does not knock. Knocking is a ceremony reserved for honesty. He opens the door with a key he never was given and steps into the close heat of a room that thinks it deserves it. Inside, the radiator's ticking is the only clock that matters. A coat slumps on a chair as if it learned shame. A calendar on the wall threatens spring as a joke. The rival looks up, smile ready for anyone, then falters when he recognizes the person and the moment both. "What are you doing?" he begins. The foreman raises a hand, not to strike but to quiet. "Say nothing that will make this worse," he says, and even his voice fogs in the warm air, the cold clinging to every consonant like habit. "What is this?" the rival says, because men who practice innocence lose the trick of it. "You come to my home." He swallows the last word and reforms it into room. It fits better with the story he is rehearsing. "You broke into my room and did violence out of envy. It is a good story. It just needs a better ending than the truth intends to give it." The foreman steps closer. He can smell the kinds of food that come from ration cards, bent into different shapes for different hands. He can smell a woman's perfume that isn't here anymore. He can smell the money. It smells like skin and pockets and heat. "You told them lies," he says. He is speaking into the room, not the man. "You talked until numbers looked like opinion." "I told them what is true," the rival says, and almost means it. It is useful for a certain kind of man when useful lies wear truth's coat. The foreman lifts the thing in his hand. He does it without flourish. He does it the way you lift a length of rebar or a handle that will raise a blind. The rival sees it and cannot understand it. It does not belong in a hand. It belongs to weather. "Put that down," the rival says. He thinks he is telling a person what to do. He does not realize he is talking to the night. The foreman takes the last step that separates rumor from fact. There is a sound, but it is not the sound people hope for in stories. It is soft and ugly, a sound of things agreeing with physics and anatomy both. The rival's mouth opens as if to catch the sound and rethink it, then closes again when no better theory arrives. Heat greets what the foreman has chosen. It greets like enthusiasm greets a scandal, devouring, eager to be included. The thing in his hand loses its edge, loses its name, loses length, vanishes by intention. The foreman strikes again, because repetition is what men do when they are not sure if they have yet done a thing enough to be allowed to stop. A third time, because 3 has a history. After that, it is mostly warm water in his glove. He stands there with the wet handle of nothing. He looks at his hand, then at the rival, who is also busy losing definition. The room smells of iron, spice and penny, of fear which is salt, of the radiator's permanence, a small, regular sermon. He drops the wetness into a basin that has forgotten many kinds of cleanliness. What remains of the thing he chose slides down the enamel and decides to be stain for a while before it decides to be memory. He breathes. He hears not his breath but the room's, the radiator, the tick of something in paint releasing a small surrender, a neighbor's cough 2 apartments away, a dog adjusting its opinion of a rug. He says the words he brought himself here to say and finds that they do not fit in his mouth. He swallows them, because men with jobs learn to eat unspent words like bread. He leaves. He closes the door gently, because breakage is work, and he has done enough work today. Walking back to the lane, he keeps his hand away from his coat. He smells the wet on his glove and knows what will happen to it if he lets it. He holds his palm to the night instead. fingers parted like a man catching falling snow. He returns to the gutter from which he borrowed the night's best idea. He looks up into the dark lip and finds it barren of tools. He smiles at that, a small, private, cold thing. Then he walks home, where his wife will ask him if his day was good, and he will say it was the kind of day days are. And then they will not talk, and then they will sleep. The next morning, the hallway of the brick building receives the footsteps of boots that do not live here. The neighbors do the right thing and become walls. The door to the rival's apartment opens under hands that did not expect the lock to obey, but are glad when it does. The two men who step inside do not look like policemen from the stories. They look like men who know how to be cold professionally. One has a notebook. The other has hands that understand where to stand for drafts. They look at the room as if rooms could be read. On the table, the piles of envelopes have fallen into new conversations with the floor. On the wall, the calendar hangs with one corner loose, winter flipping its own pages. On the chair, the coat still slumps. The radiator does its job for a person no longer in need of it. The body is where bodies are when they stop, in the way, in the center of things, surprised. They do not say the words weapon or murder right away. They say, and we'll see, and tell me again. They say the name the rival had, as if it can be convinced to sit up. The one with the notebook squats and studies the new geography of the floor. The stains have intentions, the way all fallen things do. This city knows blood. It freezes slowly if the radiator disagrees. Here, it has made a map of its last good choices. The man draws the map in pencil, then draws a rectangle where his colleague will step all day to be in the wrong place. They ask the neighbor with the cough what she heard. A radio, she says, because people in this town have learned to hear what keeps them from having to be involved. A little music, some talking. Quarrel? Notebook asks. She shrugs by use of the whole building. People talk, she says. They get louder sometimes. Who came and went? Hans asks. Everyone, she says, which is the only way not to give one name. It is both a lie and a softened truth. In places like this, the hallways have an audience and the stairs know more than they want. They find no weapon. Their hands make shapes in the air where one should have been. Something sharp, Hans says. Not knife. Knife leaves a different story. He makes a small stabbing motion and then shakes his head at himself, embarrassed by honesty. Or a different knife, he amends. They lift fabrics and find nothing but the utilitarian life men, like the rival mistake for taste. They test the window, which is frozen into its frame like doctrine. They look under the bed and learn only that dust is class blind. Notebook touches the radiator with the back of his hand. Hot, he says. Too hot for night. He looks at the body and makes a small calculation. Not long, he says, which is a word that means as long as a half-smoked cigarette in this town, and something else in towns where men smoke with money. They find on the sink's lip a stain a housewife would have made war on if there had been one here. It is tide-marked, delicate, as if a small river paused here and thought about becoming something else. Hans touches it, then tastes the air. Water, he says, and feels silly. The room is full of water in different forms. Steam is gossip. Ice is law. Snow bargains at the windows. He writes nothing about the stain because the stain is not a fact, only a please. They talk to the wife of the foreman, because according to old maps, guilt travels that road. She answers the door with a face that has learned how to be tired without asking for pity. She pours tea that explains itself with heat. The foreman sits at the table and looks at the middle distance, as if he is waiting for an answer to arrive. "I was home," he says, "with my wife. We ate potatoes and then we sat." "How long?" Hans asks. "Until sleep," the foreman says, which is both poetic and accurate. Notebook looks at the man's gloves on the radiator. They steam. "You were out," he says mildly, because mild questions pin wings down better. "For air," the foreman says. "The mill smells like men." "I went out to smell not men." He smiles at his own attempt at humor. It is the wrong day for it. "See anyone?" Hans asks. "Everyone," the foreman says, and the building where he lives agrees for him. They do not match the boot prints in the lane with his boots, because the lane is a catalogue of boot prints, and none of them can afford to be the one that says which matters. They do not find the thing that cut, because the thing that cut is not a thing anymore. They give the case a number and make lines in the notebook where a weapon should have been, and then they go to the mill to ask the men who hate the foreman if they love the rival. It is a short interview. The town discusses the event while pretending not to notice themselves doing it. In the queue for bread, a woman says shame and means nothing by it, except that the conversation should end before it worsens digestion. On the tram, a man tells another, "This is why you do not make enemies." The other man nods as though novelty has been offered him. In the bar, where the vodka tastes like wood stores, a man says Icicle with a drunk certainty, and they laugh at him because it is easier than thinking. The bartender does not laugh because he has seen too many knives to think only knives cut. That night, the lane with the bare gutter glistens under a new skin of sky. The drip begins again, like the slowest loom in the world, weaving the cold into a clear spear with no name. A cat jumps and misses. The cat misses because cats do not truly want to catch something honest. Days pass. Quotas are met, then raised. The mill hums. The foreman returns to his office and finds that paper can be made to say many things. He does not smile. Smiles admit to too much weather. He takes his gloves off the radiator and puts them on, and looks at his hands inside them like a priest unsure of which sermon he just gave. The men with notebook and hands write their report. They leave space for the future to decide who everyone was in this story. The word unknown appears in the right place on the right line, where it must. Unknown lives there with comfort. Unknowns are how towns like this learn to keep breathing. And still I wait. Up above, unnoticed unless you decide to be a child again, and tilt your head all the way back, I grow. Not because I choose growth, no one does here, but because cold asks, and I answer with shape. I add inches when the day yields to night. I sharpen when the wind confesses its speed against the eaves. I study the lane below, and what it wants to pretend, it is not. You are perhaps wondering what I am. You have guessed if you have listened to the sound of the room when it changed. You have tasted iron on the air long after iron was gone. You have followed wetness to its only intention, and then lost it. I was not forged. I was accrued. I do not leave fingerprints. I leave nothing men will catalogue. I keep the temperature of my argument until the moment I am asked to prove it. Heat is a jury that loves remorse. I give myself to it, and it takes me, and we both agree that no one needs to know what we did together. They will say there was no weapon. They will say the foreman's rage found a shape and then forgot it. They will say the town eats men, and that is why the mill needs to keep the belts tight. They will put the case in a drawer like a broken pair of spectacles, once useful, now only memory. But I remember. I remember the twist that freed me from the roof's lip. I remember the first warm bloom where I met skin, and learned how quickly conviction can soften. I remember becoming less in order to become more effective. I remember the basin's white mouth and the way what was left of me became stain, became story, became evaporated regret that returned to the sky above the lane where I am born again and again. You can call it weather. You can call it an accident of melt and freeze and municipal indifference. You can call it nothing. Or you can call me what I am. Not steel, not stone. Patience hardened, silence sharpened, vanishing made useful. They will give the case a number and call it finished. They will give the man his silence and call it peace. They will give the night nothing at all. But I remember, I was the shape the cold chose. I was the edge of its argument. They will not name me. Name me anyway. I am what the Thaw forgets first.
You have heard another tongue speak, not a man's, but the voice of what waits in silence. Things that kill, and then remember. Do you believe what you heard tonight, or something else? Leave your truth below, like, share and subscribe, so the next tongue finds you first.